Hey everybody, Coach Blaine here, Master Club Fitter and Director of Instruction for the Torshot Golf Academy, and today we're at Second Swing in Columbia, Maryland, and we're going to be talking about a very common swing fault that is likely affecting your shot. Now, in the coaching world, a lot of time players come in and they say, hey, I have a problem with my swing. I'm coming over the top, I'm slicing the ball, I'm topping the ball, I'm shanking the ball. Things that have to do with impact, right? How that club is coming down onto the ball at impact. But the reality is that if we don't have good setup posture, the chances of us making a repeatable, good contact position, it's not going to be as easy, and we're going to have to work very hard for it. And so the most important thing is that we set up to the ball, or we build our stance appropriately for the shot we're trying to hit. But most of us have something working against us, and that's just the sedentary lifestyle that is what it is these days. We spend a lot of time sitting and lounging and driving and so forth, and what happens is our hips become out of balance. The front of our hips become very tight, our backside, our butt will become very weak, and it throws our pelvis into bad positions and we're not able to control it. So today we're talking about something called S posture. And S posture is this excessive curvature of the lower back. Now this is a very interesting one to look at and to test because you may not even know that it's happening. So we have a couple of things that we're going to do beforehand just to test and see where we're at. The first thing is we're going to pretend like we're about to hit a ball, put your arms across your chest, and keeping your body as still as possible, we want to see if you can arch and round back and forth, keeping everything in your body still other than this section here in the middle. I don't want your back going up and down, I don't want your knees going in and out, so to the best of your ability, keeping everything still, arch and round and arch and round. And either you can't do it, you can do it, but your body is shaky, or you can do it. So those are kind of the three outcomes. Now, even if you can do it, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're in the clear. So we have one more test. And this next test is a little bit subjective, but it's a fun one to do anyway. I'm going to have you stand nice and tall, and I want you to squeeze your butt as hard as you can. Hold it for 3, 2, 1, then relax, and then squeeze it again. 3, 2, 1, relax. Now this time, we're going to squeeze your butt as hard as you can, and I want you to make a mental note. That's a 10 out of 10. You can't squeeze your butt any harder than that. Now, let's get into our golf setup posture, and let's try to squeeze our butt again. And the question is, what does that feel like in relation to that 10 out of 10? Is it the same? Can you still squeeze it a 10 out of 10? Chances are no. But if you're not able to squeeze it at all, this is a big red flag. That tells us that because your hips are so tight and because your backside is so weak, that you're going to be unstable throughout the golf swing and rely on things that we shouldn't have to rely on in order to, get the club back onto the ball. And this is where a lot of things like back pain come from. Because if we're bending over and unable to use these big muscles of our backside, we're going to use other muscles, maybe of our lower back, and this is where imbalances come into play of, okay, I'm casting and scooping and I'm falling behind, and everything comes from that fact that we don't have a solid connection to the ground. And we don't have a solid connection to the ground because this area right here that connects your upper body to your lower body isn't working properly. And that's the essence of S posture. So what we have to do is bring some balance back into this system, and it's twofold. The first thing we need to do is get these butt muscles awake. For some of you, it might be pretty easy. For some of you, this might be pretty hard. I've worked with players before who are maybe a little bit older in age and who have had some mobility problems that when we go to do glute activations, nothing happens. And it's a realization of, oh my goodness, my brain is sending this signal, but nothing's actually happening. So that's number one. We have to make sure that these are contracting and working properly. Once they're turned on, we can actually use those to turn off the front of our hip. And then we're bringing balance back into the equation. Right now, for most of us, tight front, weak back. We want a very strong back and not a loose front, but we want a mobile front, okay? We don't ever want anything to be loose. We just want it to have its proper range of motion. So let's go through a couple very simple exercises that we can use to get this rebalance. And the first thing we're going to do is lay on the ground. We can put our hands underneath our butt, legs out. You can close your eyes, stay comfortable, but I want you to try to squeeze your butt, both cheeks, as hard as you can, and hold it for 3, 2, 1, and then very slowly relax them. Then the next thing is you're going to squeeze just your right cheek. I want you to squeeze your right cheek, see if you can accomplish that 10 out of 10 without your left cheek doing anything, and then slowly relax it. And then let's do the left side. Squeeze the left as hard as you can. 3, 2, 1, and then slowly relax it. So that's one of our progressions. Both on, both off. Right on, right off. Left on, left off. And I want you to repeat that as many times as you need to for that to feel like you have a full contraction and a full release, and it's nice and smooth. It might take a couple rounds, it might take a couple of days. I don't care how long it takes, but I don't want you to continue to move on until you have that fundamental there. Now the next thing is we're going to turn them both on, and I want to see if you can turn off only the right and keep the left one on. And I want it to be smooth. So they're both on, and then slowly relax the right cheek only while keeping the left one a 10 out of 10 squeezed. And then turn them both on, and then see if you can turn just the left one off while keeping the right one on. And this is our next level of our progression, is we're trying to keep them on and turn one off. Turn them on, turn one off. So step 1, let's go through step 1 together. Both on, both off. Right on, right off, left on, left off. Okay, and I'm going a little bit quick here, but you get the idea. If you can do all of that, step 2 is both of them on, just the right one off. Both of them on, just the left one off. And again, we want this to be nice and smooth before we can do anything else. Now, assuming that you can do that, we now know that these muscles in your butt are able to contract. But the catch is, as soon as we bend over, the muscles in the front, your hip flexors, they shorten. They become a little bit tighter. This sends a signal to your brain to turn off your backside. But this isn't what we actually want, because in golf, we play the game bent over. So we need these to stay strong even when we're bent over. And the way we get around this is by stretching or lengthening our hip flexors. Really good for hip range of motion, for back pain, for absolutely everything. We really want to take care of this area of our body. Now, because we've turned our butt on, we can turn the hip flexors off. So just like when we bend over and these hip flexors contract and it turns our butt off, we can squeeze our butt to turn the hip flexors off. They work backwards. It's called reciprocal inhibition. It's the same reason why we can do things like a bicep curl, because when you contract the bicep, the tricep relaxes, the opposite muscle group. When I extend my arm, my triceps are contracting because the bicep is relaxing. So they work together in balance. But for so many of us, the front of our hips are so chronically tight that we create dysfunction that bleeds over into all areas. So step 1, we got the butt turned on. Step 2, we need to lengthen these front of the hips. And we're going to do that by getting into a split stance. Now, I don't care for now how far apart your feet are. You don't want to be super wide, but you also don't want to be super in line, so about shoulder width apart. But what's important here is that your toes stay pointed forward at 12 o'clock. Your chest stays tall. Your belt buckle is pointed forward. And what we can do is take the right leg, because my right leg's behind me. This is the hip I'm stretching. And I'm going to push that heel down and back. And at the same time, I'm going to squeeze my butt. And it should be able to squeeze because of the activations that we just did. When I squeeze my butt, it's going to start to push my hip forward and give me a great stretch here in the front of the hip. So my heel goes down, but my butt pushes forward. I'm trying to increase the distance, in my mind at least, between my heel and my hip. And one goes backward, one goes forward. Great stretch here in the front of the hip. If we want to add a little bit of complexity, we can get off of our heels and balance on our toes. We can turn towards our front leg, and we can reach up and over, or any combination of these three. And we're trying to accumulate just about a minute. When we're done, we can switch sides. My left leg goes back, toes pointed forward at 12 o'clock. I'm going to drive my heel down while squeezing my butt and pushing my hip forward. Chest stays tall. I'm going to add a little bit of complexity by getting off of my heels, turning into my front leg, and reaching up and over. Now, by the time we're done with this, we're talking maybe 5 minutes, right? Depending on where you're at, it might take, say, 2 or 3 minutes to do the glute activations on the ground, and it's going to take maybe, let's say, a minute per leg to do these stretches here. So in about 5 minutes or so, we've brought a lot of change into how this system works, and now we want to retest it. We get back into our golf posture, arms across the chest. Do we notice a difference with our ability to do this pelvic tilt? Do we notice a difference with our ability to keep our butt squeezed in our golf posture? If the answer is yes, congratulations. This is a big step forward. If the answer is no, then we need to go back to those basics and build our way up. A lot of us get caught up in, oh, I want to do those same exercises that we see on the internet or on TV that tour pros are doing. But just note that the reason the tour pros can do those really cool looking things, throwing barbells around and swinging kettlebells and box jumps and sprints and sled pulls and you name it, right? They can do that because this is functioning properly. And any great golf coach or great golf fitness coach worth their salt isn't going to ask an athlete to do something that is misaligned with what their body can do. So S posture is an incredibly, incredibly important thing to address. It's usually the #1 thing that I need to work on with players inside the Tour Shot Golf Academy, is that when we come in, we don't know how to use the ground. The pelvis isn't aligned. We don't have the ability to brace and move energy through into the ball. And this is super important because if you're producing power and it's not going into the club, the question is, where is it going? And you're wasting that energy. And typically it's being absorbed by things like your knees and through your back and through your neck and shoulders. So we really want to bring some balance back into this equation. I appreciate you all being here. As always, everybody, move better, play better.